Welcome to the Smartling Global Ready Conference 2026. Thank you for attending, and you're in good company. We have set a new record with over 2,000 registrants. I think it's fair to say that this has been a pretty wild year. The work has changed, the pressure has changed, the pace of change has accelerated, but the opportunity in front of us has also expanded. Today, we're going to spend time in that reality, not flinching from it, not simplifying it, but learning how to move through it with intention. Simply put, our goal is, as always, to help you succeed. Because moments like these test organizations, they test teams, they test leaders, but they also create openings to rethink how work gets done, openings to build new capabilities, openings to elevate the role of global teams inside the enterprise, and openings for each of us to grow personally as the world around us changes. This is a moment to lean in, to build, to lead, and to turn change into opportunity. Speaking for myself, I couldn't be more excited. We just came off our Q1 road shows, 13 cities from Berlin to San Francisco, conducting intensive workshops with hundreds of localization leaders. A year ago, people were debating whether to use AI translation. That debate is over. Every CEO and C-suite around the world is under pressure from investors to deliver AI results. Now the question is, how do I scale AI translation to deliver the quality, trust, and governance that my organization needs? Because AI translation without quality is a trap. We all see AI slop every day. Conversion engagement rates decline, and the risk of brand or regulatory damage increases exponentially. The teams that are getting this right aren't treating quality as a final checkpoint. They're treating it as infrastructure, built into every layer so that what gets published reflects the brand, not just the model produced. If done right, AI translation is a huge competitive unlock for your business. The localization leaders who understand how to deliver AI capability and quality and governance at scale are the ones that are becoming indispensable. Today, you're going to hear from leaders in localization who have figured it out. You'll learn from companies like DocuSign, IHG, IBM, SumUp, and more that are successfully implementing AI translation and moving from traditional fragmented localization into a fully modern AI-powered global content operation. Watch for these sessions. But we're starting with someone who has done this more than once at some of the biggest companies in the world. She's a global technology executive with over 30 years of experience at companies like Cisco, VMware, NetApp, and Procore. She's led large global teams across product, engineering, infrastructure, and international strategy, and is the co-founder and president of Women in Localization. She's also the author of Truly Global and a member of the Catalan Parliament. Practitioner, community builder, and policymaker, all three in one. Please welcome Anna Schlegel.
Hello.
All right, Anna, great to see you. Wow, what a year. We're watching roles change in real time, departments move, team sizes cut, managers suddenly responsible for outcomes that they've never been measured on before. The people on this call are living this in real time. Are you ready for some questions?
I am. Nice to be here with you, Bryan.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. So, Anna, what are you actually seeing out there right now, and why do you think so many people haven't seen this coming?
Oh man. I mean, I think the role is definitely changing, right? Faster than most people would realize. It's not disappearing. People are like, oh, localization is going to be gone. No. It's not disappearing. But I think it's definitely shifting. Reporting lines are new. They're moving, the scope is expanding, they're changing you into a new department. But I think it's leaning more into a business role because automation and AI and workflows and systems are here more than ever, right? So I think there's many companies that already help you do that automation. You need to be more into a business role, right? And then in high tech, the leaders that I see, right, that we see navigating this well are the ones that saw this a while back already and are getting ahead, so to speak, right? So they're building active relations. They're making the case for their function, if they need to stay here or they need to move, do they need to position themselves differently for what's to come, rather waiting to be told where to go. I wouldn't wait, right? I would be leading that conversation. I think coming from the Silicon Valley, we felt this very early, but around the world, other regions are just picking up, right? And then the denial, I think, that we're seeing is just not about lack of talent. It's, I think, a need for business acumen. So the change came in really fast. So as many tools in your toolbox of business leadership you have, you're going to do better, right? I think many leaders are stuck in sort of like a late adopter. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Or waiting for their executives to tell them, right? But this is a new muscle. That's why I keep talking about business acumen here, because you don't build it immediately. Business acumen are tools and classes that you have to take and books that you need to read and networking and new abilities. We also have to remember, somebody was telling me a couple of weeks ago, remember that the second L in LLM is language. And we know language, right? People in localization are the best at language. And so no one understands the nuances of all these models, I think, better than this community, the localization community. So you can use that. You can say like, hey, the second L is localization, it's language, is how do you have those skills around language. I think also something else that I would say is we're moving from managing content to managing margin. So again, those business skills, right? So most effective leaders are growth engineers. And so the difference between a product that is merely translated, it's a product that resonates culturally. So we have to learn those words and those phrases and those keywords that business people use, right? So I think to move forward some ideas is you think of also you have to think of speed as a feature, right? Because leaders who come out ahead act while they have the choice, and they don't behave like they're forced to, right? And then the efficiency dividend, you don't want to wait for the CFO to find your extra budget. So you find it yourself, you're proactive in looking for it, and you're reinvesting it into higher value strategic initiatives. So this is no longer about the price per word and that kind of stuff. So you need to own a different model. And also talking about models, you want to be in the LLM business. Don't let just your data team manage it. You need to get right into and explain that you're the language expert, right? So if you're not in that conversation, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. What we see are teams that are falling behind is not due to lack of talent or effort. It's lack of narrative, being invisible in AI environment. They get read as being unnecessary. I remember when I ran vertical markets at eBay, that was a big global job, and we had an incredible translation localization function within the business. I never knew them. I never even met them. Okay, I'm probably getting a lot of eye rolls on this call right now, but that's the reality of matter for an executive. And then back then it was probably okay. It probably would have been a better idea for the leader of that team to come introduce themselves to me and tell me, hey, this is how we're helping you grow your business, right? But my point is, it might have been okay then. It's not okay now, because if you're not visible and you're not leading with a strategy to drive growth, you're invisible, and you run the risk of being one of these teams that, when they're evaluating layoffs, and we see this all the time. This the hard truth is like, well, I don't know what these people do, so they're probably expendable. You don't want to be there, right? So a few things that we see customers getting wrong right now are letting the AI conversation happen without them. Engineering IT picks a model, sets the workflow, maybe they do a little RAG, ships the output, and next thing you know, the localization team finds out later that this has been done. And by the time they're in the room, those decisions are already made. They're boxed out. So this is the exposure that Anna's been describing. So, but teams that insert themselves early and lead the AI conversation and lead and talk in terms of not cost per word, But growth, conversion rate, those things, those are the ones that end up owning the initiative and become incredibly valuable. I would say the number two mistake that I see all the time, and this is not limited to localization teams. This is, as in my 20 plus years as a CEO, I see this mistake getting made all the time by departmental leads, pitching headcount instead of outcome, right?
Yeah.
When teams come to leadership asking to preserve resources or to hire heads without talking about the outcome first, it's never goes well. All right. It never goes well. So you want to pitch the outcome. In other words, what market or channel are we going to grow? Which customer experience are we going to improve? Here is the ROI. Now that pitch gets the C-suite's attention and buy-in, and then you can talk about how you're going to deliver it.
So I think tempting to ask for a headcount, right? But no.
Every time I see it, I just saw it like last week. It's like, I'm like, you know, that comes later. Okay. But make sure you pitch what you're trying to accomplish, what the outcome is going to be. So I think that was a great start. Okay. So most localization leaders sell their function on cost savings and efficiency. You said that's the wrong pitch. What should they be saying instead?
I think that was the pitch 15, 20 years ago, right? I think today, the moment you start pitching efficiency, you may have lost already. It may not be the case for everybody, right? But in general, I think you lose, right? Because of this business acumen that we're talking about. So if you only position localization as a cost center, you're going to be treated like a cost center. So really watch out, right? Because the first budget line item that can be cut when things get tight or severely cut is a cost center, right? So don't talk about yourself as a cost center. In the last couple of companies that I led, NetApp and Procore, where we were the globalization strategy for the org and other teams, the breakthroughs didn't happen when we translated faster. Nobody cared. Like they didn't even know, right? So it happened because we tied the work to entering the right markets or the markets that the board was looking at and revenue to that velocity. Want to get into the UK? Let's run how to do it properly, right? So attach yourself more to those conversations because executives, as you were saying, right, they don't wake up saying, oh, I wonder how that team is going to cut $10,000 out of translation costs, right? So I think executives, we wake up thinking of, are we going to hit the quarterly targets? Are we helping customers be very successful? So it's different. It's a different type of conversation. So please stop talking about cost per word and start talking about things like time to market, time to revenue, and keeping customers super happy. So I think there's a pivot on the pitch, right? So the old pitch that I made many times, right, was AI is going to help us save 20% of the translation cost or the budget so that they can give it back to you. No, wrong, right? So you want to do it. You want to save money, but you take that money with you, right? And reinvest it in your own team. I think the new pitch there is that you're using AI or we're using AI to reduce our global launch cycle from 6 months to a few weeks, right? That's where it's at. And that's going to give your sales team so much extra time to prepare and selling time in whatever region of the world that they decide, right? So if you tie yourself to revenue and sales, even if you're not in sales, right? You're already helping accelerate the international pipeline by X million. That's the conversation. And you actually want to find out what's the amount of revenue that you helped sell or that you were able to influence, right? So think of it this way. So velocity, volume, so the speed to market is the ultimate currency nowadays. And then risk is a revenue protector. So tying localization to legal and compliance, for example, is also a good thing because it protects the company from market exit risks and massive fines, as we see, for example, right? Some US companies getting into the European Union and getting fined. So you want to do this really well done. You can tie yourself also to legal and compliance, but just not that, right? It would be one of the ingredients in your pitches, and then win rates for sure. You have to show that being culturally intelligent is de-risking the expansion. So you have win rates that are better and bigger because you're culturally intelligent, right? Better than your competitors. So use that velocity again. You're not translating. You want to stop talking about I'm translating and this is the cost per word, and that's very old. No, no más, no more. Don't do that, right?
Yeah.
So these are just examples where executives care about words like, speed to market.
Agreed. I love that that phrase, culturally intelligent. I spend a lot of time in our marketing organization. Over half our pipeline comes from marketing, right? And the vast majority of that is driven by direct traffic or organic traffic, which is in turn driven by SEO, AEO. In other words, content. Okay.
Yeah.
So we know that localized content converts 50% better than non-localized content or English content. I always hear, well, we're a software company. Most of our customers speak English. Okay, I can speak a little Spanish. I'm not going to buy anything from a Spanish website. It's, you know what I mean? You're not showing me that you know me. You're not being culturally intelligent, right? So I do think that this is for, when you think about the amount of time and money that companies invest in international growth, right? Spinning up an operation, hiring a GM, hiring the salespeople, BDR, It's jillions of dollars compared to the cost of taking that last step, which is to localize those efforts. And I just think it's penny wise, pound foolish to miss that next step, which, if done right and pulled ahead and integrated as part of that whole international growth strategy, can be enormously powerful.
Absolutely. You have to know how to tell that story, right? So you have to prepare really well to speak up like that. Like,
yeah,
Bryan did, people.
Yeah, I think that's a great conversation. Internally, I think a lot of local managers that I meet, they don't come from business backgrounds. They come from their former translators, and maybe they feel uncomfortable having this conversation. Some do, some are quite competent, right, and don't, but many don't. In those cases, find a partner in marketing and partner up with them. And I think that's a way that you can help develop that story. That would be a recommendation I'd make. You're always looking for a partner. Even, as the CEO of Smartling, I'm always looking for partners within my organization to help me think through strategies. And I think that applies to everyone. All right. So question number 3, Anna, you said internal positioning has to be constant, not a one-time pitch. What does that actually look like in practice?
Unfortunately, content, ideas, suggestions, visions, missions, they need to be repeated all the time. So I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make, right, is thinking that once a budget is approved, then, oh, good, you're done. No. It doesn't work like that. Selling is not over, right? So I think if you're in a hyper growth, high growth, AI disrupted environment right now, your value has probably half of a life that it used to have like a few years ago, like 2 years, 3 years ago, right? So you're constantly reinventing, renewing. We see it in the job descriptions, right, of these companies. They're like, you're going to write your job description for a year. Maybe in 2 years you won't be here. So it's kind of, you have to be really agile and on your feet and selling, right? I think in practice, this isn't about making decks. It's about political capital. And when I say political capital, there's good politics, and good politics are very necessary to create your networks of friends. Like Bryan was just saying, I work with marketing to be able to do my pitches, right? So who are those internal board of directors to create or build up your business acumen and your political capital? And then you create almost like an architecture of allies inside, what I call my internal board of directors. You don't need to tell them your board of directors, but you want to surround yourself with people that have done it or are savvy or can help you push up a little bit, right? So you have to be almost like a chief networking officer of your team, of your function, of your department, right? So you're always on. Unfortunately, if you're the leader, you have to be on, right? So we used to always create these 360-degree alliance maps. I've done this for years, right? Exactly know who the rising suns are in the company, not in your org, in the company. What are the awesome VPs? Who was just hired? Who are the directors that are really growing in the company? Who are the influential people? You want to know them. You want to have one-on-ones with them. You want to align them, your roadmap with them. They need to know you, right? You need to be part of their success. You make them important, right?
Yeah.
And successful. And I think we were talking about the narrative beat, right? You need to have stories that are changing all the time. You need to read the newspaper. You need to watch the news. You need to be on it, like almost like a 30, 60, 90-day story. You have to be savvy about that because every conversation you're going to have with these, rising suns and stars in the company is an opportunity, right, to drop a data point about your team, how you just accelerated this, or how you entered a new account, or how you localize something that now just landed more work. So, and then I would talk a lot about the pivot move, right? If your department is not getting it, find the leader that may get it, right? Because not every leader that I've had understood what we did. So sometimes I move the whole department. And this may take a while, but you need to be savvy about being able to shift departments. And also, the other thing that I would say is that visibility, being visible, is being secure at work. So you buy some security. I'm not saying that it's for everybody and in every company, but in a crisis, executives do not cut the people they understand. It's psychology. And this is very strategic, right? They cut the people that they don't know. They cut the people that they haven't heard from, right? So some of these things are part of what I call the always on framework, right? Like your alliance map, your narrative, your pivot, be ready to move, being visible. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, you have to be humble, blah, blah, blah. No, you have to be smart. I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah. I think that's I don't know if you put this in your book, but you should in your next, because this is such an incredible insight and framework. It's just great.
Yeah. No, I just came up with this framework for this.
You did? It's amazing. All right. You should make sure you write it down, copyright it, put it in your next book.
Bryan said, yeah.
No, but it is true. Every executive, every leader that I've ever met understands this, right? Building the alliance map, having that narrative beat, pivot move I love, and visibility. It's all right there. Don't be the guy, I can't remember his name, in the movie Office Space with a red stapler in the basement. That's not the person you want to be. Even though you might be technically perfect at your job, you're at risk, especially in this environment. It's not even when things turn down. I mean, companies are being very aggressive right now, looking for ways to reduce headcount. And I just think that, so that's why we're really employing it. Like I said in the beginning, our job is to help you be successful. And I think that's such a great insight on it for the team. And I think, when I think about this, the one thing that we kept hearing on the road, right? The leaders who are winning this are not the ones that are making a single big case once a year, right? They're showing up in the small moments, a quick framing for the CPO before a roadmap meeting, a one-slide brief for the CMO before the budget season. I always like to remind people that you need to tell something 7 times before they remember it. People in my company know this and they roll their eyes. And by the way, that's when I know I've done my job, is when someone can repeat it back to me or they roll their eyes when I say it. That's when oh, great. Okay. Now my job is done. So you want to be, you got to have that drum beat. And that's really the shift. So let's move into the career, right? The career power move. So you've talked about localization leaders becoming AI experts, even AI managers.
Yeah.
Why is this a natural move and not a stretch?
Because I think what we were talking about, right? The second L, right? So localization and globalization leaders have been there for many years. So they are the only people that understand language like nobody, right? So they're the content strategists, they're the linguists, they're the localizers, they understand who's in what country. And so they possess so much knowledge, right? And almost like the master map of language for the company. And that's why you want to stop talking about translations and cost and this. You're like, I'm going to give you the master map for the company. And then because I own that, we can apply it to our own very large language models, right? We are the only functions that horizontally touches all departments, right? Maybe HR does as well, or finance does as well. But globalizers, if they're not decentralized, if they're centralized, they touch everything. So they touch marketing and legal and engineering and support and HR and product, everything, right? So they can be positioned as the guardians of the meaning at a very global scale for the company. Again, I'm using very new words, right? So that people get ideas, like steal these ideas, master maps of language, right? The second L of the LLM, the guardians of meaning. Because to move, I think the move to AI for localizers shouldn't be a big stretch. You want to attach yourself to AI governance because AI governance requires exactly what we've mastered for decades, right? Consistency, accuracy, speed, brand loyalty, a large content lakes, content strategies, tech pubs, all this stuff is in there. And you understand it, right? As a localizer, as a globalizer. And then as AI scales content volume exponentially, the company's biggest risk is a global trust gap. So it's moving so fast. There's so much more language, so much more marketing, because now you can use marketing agents, for example, right? Who's going to make sure that all those words, all that content is perfect locally, right? So you can be this guardian of the global trust, right? I don't know. I like to think about this stuff.
No, I agree. And I think it's super important, right? We see, a lot of folks say, well, their idea of an AI strategy is to plug in, Claude or GPT and let the model translate it, right? But especially in regulated, you've got regulatory issues, you've got brand issues, you've got these things. When something goes wrong, who owns that, right? Anthropic isn't going to step up to the plate. I guarantee,
No.
or Google, no. And the engineering team is, I've got an engineering team, and no, they're not going to step up to the plate either. They don't know what they're looking at when it comes to, 50 different languages across 30 million words. They can build it for sure, but at the end of the day, someone that is an expert in localization needs to be the one that owns the localization strategy. I'm a firm believer in that. I've seen it play out a gajillion times.
Absolutely.
So the localization leader is the most natural answer. That is the person that should be leading that strategy. But that's the kind of like, that's the verb, right? Like you have to lead that strategy, right? Otherwise, someone else is going to lead it for you.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So question number 5. So if someone is sitting at their desk after this session, what does a real AI localization strategy actually include? What are the table stakes?
All right. So here's how I would architect this master plan, right? Because I think this strategy is very much like a tipping point. You have to use this opportunity to get in and say, like, hey, I've been strategizing with my team, right? So you just don't bring in an AI solution, right? You're going to use this disruption to remap the whole role or even end-to-end content strategy, right? That will ensure that global trust that we were talking about, because content is exponentially so much bigger. So I personally, I would go in with an orchestration over adoption, right? I wouldn't say things like, hey, we're moving to AI. They already expect that, right? So you're going to show how you're orchestrating the enterprise content supply chain that needs to go global, right? You're going to map the products, you're going to map the stakeholders, you're going to map the countries, you're going to know the tiers of those countries, you're going to know the tiers of the portfolio of the products, you're going to map the company goals, and then the architecture required to make the company global by default or global by design or truly global. Use any of those words, right?
That's another good one.
The second thing I always like to do is the connectivity audit, right? Like identify every department currently creating siloed content. So propose a centralized AI content hub under your leadership. You can do it, right? So you can move into managing content strategy for the company and owning like an AI content hub, or you unite the two departments. I've done that several times. I think the other thing that you want to do is you want to upgrade the infrastructure. Things are happening very fast. Time to market is super important. Competition is fierce, right? So you're going to frame your plan as a global migration because of this disruption, right? Again, this is all your opportunity to say, hey, we're going to move the company from these manual, fragmented, dumb, old legacy systems that don't serve us anymore into a automated, unified, AI-powered machinery here. Because otherwise, you won't be able to compete. So orchestration, connectivity audit, upgrade the infrastructure, all these three things, it's just like the perfect time to do this, to say, I've been strategizing with my team, I've met with all these stakeholders internally and customers, and this is what we need. And you are the right person because you have the horizontal advantage that we were looking at or talking about, right? You have this cross-functional network. You have the metrics of trust. You know that you need to move from word counts to global content integrity and that velocity. So you're going to show the C-suite or your VPs or your executives that without your oversight, AI-generated content can be a liability. So you really have to watch out for this. And then you want to own the outcome. You want to say, I own this outcome. And you want to do this. You want to position yourself, and you can't position yourself. You have to have these conversations in your one-on-ones, right? Because you know how to do global brand experiences through localization, through the content strategies, through aligning horizontally to the countries, the markets, the revenue, right? So I think you want to own that blueprint for a global AI content strategy. That's what I would say. And you're going to show your VP, and you're going to come in super strong, and you're going to show them all this stuff, and they're going to go like, all right, you're staying. I mean, it's a good opportunity to pivot that conversation.
Yeah, I love that. The blueprint for a global AI content strategy, and you're the global architect of the enterprise. I think that's super powerful and great positioning. It's a great takeaway for everyone on this call. And, when we think about a Smartling, what we think about is helping build that, and solving the quality and trust problem at the platform level, right? So AI translation moves incredibly fast, but speed without quality is a trap. And it's really interesting, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, when I got here 5 years ago, I remember a lot of analysts, a lot of people telling me, hey, Bryan, Smartling is a TMS. You should not be in the translation business, right? Those two things are separate. And I remember just thinking to myself, that just does not make any sense to me. And that was even before AI. And now I look at it, and as this shifts over, right, and this becomes so automated, and now we're, our AI translation grew over 200% last year. We're processing 12 billion words a year. It has to be integrated. It has to be. It can't be, I got this company over here, I got that company over there, and I got this thing over here, and I'm stitching this whole thing together. It's just not going to work at this type of volume and speed, and being that global AI content strategy, providing that. I think that's a really important distinction. But I do love that. I love that idea of being the global architect of the enterprise. Okay. Moving on, what do the titles and roles that come out of this evolution actually look like? Is this theoretical, or are you actually seeing it?
I think we're seeing it, but I'm not too worried about the titles, but the titles are changing, right? But what we want to do is change the power dynamic. You don't want to be seen, oh, like the people that take care of translations, right? Because then you go back to these cost centers, right? Stuff. So I think the value in the industry and the shift that we're seeing is from execution and how, which now AI treats as a commodity. So you want to move into governance and influence. Obviously, you're not going to put influence in your title, but as you present this new approach and this new orchestration, you can say, I am going to be the global content or digital. You can use that opportunity to really reinvent the whole titles of your org, right? Because I would even move away sometimes. I did start as a localization manager, but I ended up being like global growth vice president, general manager of growth. So start changing that conversation. Here's some names that I'm seeing or that I would like to see more of, which is like maybe you're the AI governance lead. And as we came up here as like the global trust officer, people are going to go like, what is this? Maybe they think it's illegal, right? But maybe there is no global trust officer, or maybe it's the global brand officer, or the the AI cultural specialist. You're going to have to go up and down the team, the stack of folks in your work, but definitely director of AI globalization. Right, we saw even OpenAI needed to have a localization manager, right? So you want to go and change the titles to be more of an owner and say, I got this, I got the global brand, I got the global content, right? You don't need to own the LLM to control it, because, for example, at Procore, we did have a chief data officer, but boy, was I working with her, right? So you want to come up as a boss, as an owner, as somebody who's going to secure credibility, global trust, all that kind of stuff. So for this, it's not easy. You're going to have to do the 7 times. I used to tell my team 17 times. And then when I start getting tired of myself, then I know, a little bit like Bryan, when I was getting tired of myself, like maybe I've explained it 17 times, but you do need to teach and educate, not teach, but educate your stakeholders, right? Because your job now is to teach the C-suite or your VPs that global AI is not plug and play. It's complex, right? It's sophisticated. It touches the cultural realities of your local towns and your local products and your local customers. So that requires a master mechanic, right? And so I've seen this personally in major Silicon Valley places where I've worked. I've watched localization directors stop talking about translation memory, but maybe start talking about model alignment, AI model alignment, right? So before you had like a TMS expert, you have to move on from those things, right?
Yeah.
Change the vocabulary. It will change the visibility also, right? And I've even seen somebody reporting to a CTO because it's so futuristic, so unknown, so new, so exciting for some people, right? So innovative. So play with it. Use some of the words that Bryan and I are using in this keynote, and say, Bryan said or Anna said, it's time to have fun and reinvent. I know it's scary times, but it can be a very positive thing for your team.
Yeah, I agree. I think I love the stakeholder education bit. I was, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I just like the honest answer is that most C-suite, most business leaders don't understand localization. They don't. They like, especially if the company is newer to it, lower on the maturity curve, but they just don't. They don't understand the value of it. They think, hey, I can just do this with GPT or whatever. Why don't I just let Google Translate do it, right? When you start educating them on the impact, right? The fact 65% of people won't buy, from a website in another language, and that it can improve, conversion rates, 50, 60, up to 50 to 60%. When you start talking to them in their language and about growth, they get it. It comes naturally. It's like I always love to use the example, right? If, people are like, well, most people speak English around the world. That's the lingua franca. They understand it. But I always say, like, listen, if I showed you a website in Japanese, even if you could read a little Japanese, would you take the time to read it? No, you wouldn't. And you certainly really wouldn't engage with it unless you really had to, right? And that's not what marketing's about. So that's, I think, putting that perspective, that simple story, telling that simple story to executives a lot of times gets them to think, yeah, I guess you're right about that, right? So, and when you say, hey, and by the way, I have this AI strategy to reinvent how we globalize, you're going to get their attention. Especially, the fact of the matter is that with AI, you're going to get those efficiencies, right? You're going to get way more content. You've heard me talk about Jevons paradox before, right? The lower you bring the price, the easier you make it, the more you can use, right? I was kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, but 60% of our traffic, of our leads, come in from either direct or organic search. Okay, that's content, right? So what do I want to do as a marketer? I want to get as much content as I can into my target markets, right? And I want it to be high quality, and I want it to be localized. We do it ourselves. It's highly effective. Right. So this is where, back in the days of when translation was 18 cents a word, right? And it took 6 weeks to get it. You ration that. You just didn't do it. But in today's world, where I can get it for a fraction of a penny, and I can do it and 100% automated and near instant, why wouldn't you? Right? Finish that last mile. So I think that this is really the exciting part. Okay, so we're coming up into the close here. I want to come back to something. When I opened the session, we talked about the fact that we are at a very important inflection point. We've talked about leaders in the AI era are the ones that own the quality and trust layer, not just as a function, but as a strategic asset. So I want to ask one practical question, or end with one practical question. What is the one thing that someone should go do today as a result of this conversation?
See this conversation as your tipping point, like audit your strategy, rethink, map it, write it down, pen it down with a pencil, or on a board or with your team. I think it's a call to action to really remain very strong in the profession and ask yourself, am I architecting this for the future, or am I holding on to legacy or the past? So this is a tipping point. Go back and audit your strategy. That's what I would say. You have the metrics, you have the network. Now use them, right? Use them to remap the entire end-to-end content engine. See who owns content strategy. Just don't propose AI, right? So you want to orchestrate it properly. And how does the company go global? And think as a business person, like if you were the president of that company, what would you do? Right? Take the strategy as a tipping point when you show that not only are you bringing an AI solution, but you can use this as your chance to oversee more or influence more, right? Or have new allies. And that everybody's trying to figure it out, right? So be part of that conversation. Use the metrics that you've been using for years, right? You're well established. I know many of you on the call that are excellent directors, managers, senior managers, program managers of localization, QA leaders, right? So use your network and maybe just rethink the strategy, right? And so I would do a blueprint, right? Do a blueprint and think of hybrid models potentially. Think of just not just building the plan, but also selling the plan. So create your own business. We had so much fun always. We always thought we were a business in the business.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, to go strategize, I would say.
Amazing. Anna, thank you so much for this incredible session. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone on the call did as well.